We've really only got one binder check left for the rest of the year, so that'll come about the time of our final, whenever that is, or maybe right before the final. So here's part 2, and we'll also have a part 3 to this section tomorrow. So this is pretty much the last section that we'll get to before our long weekend. And I've got these over on the side again, but I'm just wanting to show you that we are using these formulas again. So they're up there if you need them. All right. Now, this is the directions for the entire lesson today. It says, find exact values. Find exact values of sine of 2u, cosine of 2u, and tangent of 2u using the given information. Bless you. Find exact values of sine of 2u, cosine of 2u, and tangent of 2u using the given information. All right. These kind of go back to the triangle types of problems yesterday. We're not going to have any problems today where we have to really solve an equation like that. But we are going to be working with some more right triangles. So this is example 1. There's only 2 today, so it's kind of a short lesson. Cosine of u is negative 5/13. And it's also given me this second part that says pi over 2 is less than u, which is less than pi. Now, I want to explain that notation a little bit, and we've maybe seen this before, but this is pretty much a fancy way of saying u is between pi over 2 and pi. That's a fancy way of writing that u is between pi over 2 and pi. So if we're going to construct a right triangle to help us get our labels done and to help us with all of those double angles, I need to first figure out what quadrant I'm in. Now, I'll pull my handy dandy up here. You might have yours in front of you, but this is actually what I'm looking at right now, the unit circle. And it said u is between pi over 2. I know this is kind of hard to see up here, but this is pi over 2 and pi, which is right here. U is between pi over 2 and pi. That means that we are in quadrant 2 if we're between pi over 2 and pi. And the reason I want to know that is so I can construct my triangle like this. This is what I should look like if I'm in quadrant 2. Question?
So, do you know to go to the left and not all the way around because it's negative?
Right. When we moved this direction, it was always positive. So this was starting at 0, so they get bigger as you go this way, and you're right, going the other way would just be negatives. Yeah, and I don't even think they really label the negatives too much on here, but that's right. Okay, so on the PowerPoint, when I switch over, I'm going to make my triangle like this. The only difference is I'm not going to use the letter theta. I'm going to put u where theta was, because in this problem, they're using u. So, I mean, that's not like super important. You're not going to get counted off if you put theta down there. But I'm just letting you know that is our angle, u. Now, with that first little part, I should be able to label some of this. And I know cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Hypotenuse has to be positive. So adjacent side, that would have to be the -5, and the hypotenuse has to be the 13. Now, more than likely, I will need to know what this side is as well. So I'm going to go ahead through my Pythagorean theorem to find that missing side. I'm calling it B. It could be A or B. So if I square 13, I get 169. Subtract the 25 and then square root both sides. Now be careful about the positives and the negatives. If I'm in quadrant 2, should this side be positive or negative? Positive, yes. So we want positive 12 for that missing side. Now at this point, we should have everything that we need to run through our formulas. So let's just start with sine of 2u. Okay, I'm going to run through the formula for that. And there's only one option. It's 2 sine of u cosine of u. 2 sine of u cosine of u. So keep the 2 out front. And sine of u. Here's u, not you, but u, the letter u. And it goes opposite over hypotenuse. So that would be 12 over 13ths. Okay, cosine, you can get it from the triangle, or if you want to just plug it in from what they gave you at the beginning, same thing. That is -5/13. Now to multiply these, I kind of want to put the 2 over 1. And there is a negative right here, only one negative sign. So my answer does have to be negative. Now on top, I'm taking 2 times 12 times 5, which I think is 120. And there it is. On bottom, 1 times 13 times 13. There's no square roots here. It's just 13. So you actually have to multiply those out. That would give you the 169 on bottom. I don't think that fraction reduces, so we can leave it like that. Now we also need to find cosine of 2u, so that's the next part. And feel free to use any one of our formulas. I'm just going to go with the first one unless something tells me otherwise. So, cosine squared of u, remember that's the same as the entire cosine of u squared. So that is -5/13 squared. And then second part, sine squared of u is the same as the entire sine of u squared. Now what happens when you square a negative right here? It turns positive. So this is positive 25 over 169. Make sure you know back here that you're not squaring this minus sign. The minus sign is just there. The only part that you're squaring is that fraction. And that should be 144 over 169. So subtract, and I think you get -119 over 169. Alrighty. Questions about sine of 2u or cosine of 2u. Now we still need tangent of 2u, so I'm going to the next slide for this part. And if you were not here yesterday, here's a shortcut that I showed them to find tangent. If you already know what sine of 2u is and what cosine of 2u is, it's probably a little bit easier to do it like a quotient identity. Take sine of 2u divided by cosine of 2u. You can use this formula, but it probably is a little bit messier. I'm going to go this way. So earlier, backing up, sine of 2u was negative 120 over 169. So that goes on top. And cosine of 2u, that was negative 119 over 169. Now, I do need to keep change flip, and I can already tell that I'm taking a negative divided by a negative, which is going to be a positive. So when I keep change flip, I'm just going to leave the negatives off. I know it's going to be positive anyway. So the 169 should cross out, and that leaves you with a positive 120 over 119. The nice part about the problems today is in the directions you have to find sine and cosine anyway, so you might as well just do this for tangent every time, unless you prefer the formula. That is quite a bit easier. Any questions on example 1? 3 parts to that. Now we'll do 3 parts here on example 2, and then this will be it. So now it says secant of u is negative 4, and it also says pi is less than u, which is less than 3 pi over 2. Now, if you have a handy-dandy in front of you, I need your help. If u is between pi and 3 pi over 2, what quadrant should we be in? Yes, quadrant 3. So let us sketch a triangle like we're in quadrant 3. And again, I'm not using theta, I'm just using u. And the part that I have to label this says that secant of u is negative 4. Now, I may want to put that over 1 so I can do my SOHCAHTOA stuff a little bit easier. But here's the part that's misleading. The negative looks like it's with the 4, but it could be with the 1 instead of the 4. It's just that most of the time we move the negative up to simplify. So I really need to pay attention to what quadrant I'm in. If you look at handy dandy, secant is on here. Secant is hypotenuse over adjacent. So that is what I need to label this. But here's the part that looks misleading. Hypotenuse should never be negative. That negative sign actually needs to go with the 1. The 4 is the hypotenuse, and the hypotenuse is always positive. The 1 is on that adjacent side, and if you're in quadrant 3, that side has to be negative. Okay, so let's do our Pythagorean theorem real quick to figure out the missing sign. I'm calling it B. It can be A or B. So negative 1 squared is 1. If you square negative, you get a positive. 4 squared is 16. So subtract 1 and square root both sides. Now here again, you have to pause and think about what quadrant you're in. You're in quadrant 3, so should this side be positive or negative? Negative. We need to write that as negative square root of 15. Negatives are a big deal in trig because it all depends on what quadrant you are in. All right, on to our formulas. Sine of 2u. I've got 2 sine of u, cosine of u. Now, let's keep the 2 out front and then use our triangle to help us with the next couple parts. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so that would be negative square root of 15 over 4. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so that would be negative 1/4. Now, I do know that my answer here should be positive. A negative times a negative is a positive. And when you take 2 times square root of 15, you can't really combine those very well. You just have to leave it as 2 square root of 15. But anybody see something else I could do to that fraction? Yeah, we can reduce. Divide by 2 on top and bottom. So if you're working ahead, that's fine. But double check that you reduce that. It should be square root of 15 over 8. Okay, moving on to cosine of 2u. Stop me if you're getting back something different. But here again, I'm using cosine squared of u, which is the same as the entire cosine squared, minus sine squared of u, which is the same as the entire sine of u squared. Be very careful with your negatives. Let me show you how this should work. Squaring a negative should turn positive. So I do get back a positive 1/16 from the first part. Do not make those minus signs a plus sign because exponents come before addition or subtraction. So I really need to bring that minus sign down, then square the negative square root of 15 over 4. So square the square root of 15 and you just get 15. Square of 4 and you get 16. Square a negative, you get positive, but that other minus sign should still be in the middle. So by the time I take 1 minus 15, I get negative 14/16. But that should reduce to negative 7 over 8. That would be our final answer for cosine of 2 theta. Check those out. Make sure you got the same thing. And last part is tangent of 2 theta. So I'm going to do our little quotient identity here. Sine of 2 theta, not theta, u, sine of 2u is square root of 15 over 8. Cosine of 2u, found that earlier, that was negative 7 over 8. So we keep, change, and flip. Now the 8's cross out, and you will have a negative in this answer. It should be negative square root of 15 over 7. Again, you should be able to do this on all of your problems today as long as you already know what sine of 2u is and what cosine of 2u is. Any questions about those? Good stuff here. All right, your assignment is up on the board. It is T44 from page 390. We're going to do numbers 21 to 26. Now, there's something else that I would like for you to kind of start doing in the next day or two. VU, if you're taking this for dual credit, they've probably sent you an email about doing the instructor survey. They're really on us to have you guys do that. So at some point, maybe tomorrow, maybe Thursday, I'm going to give you time in class to do the survey if you haven't done it already. But to complete the survey, you need your MyVU username and password. So hopefully tonight, or maybe tomorrow night, we'll probably plan it for Thursday, I would say. But at some point, track down your username and password. They should have had you set that up last semester. If you can't find it, you can probably use your social security number or something else to figure it out. But it will be really helpful if you know that ahead of time so we can do those before our long weekend.